Hi, welcome to the Frugal Frau. I'm Suki, your host. And today I'm going to show you how I make patterns to duplicate these spatulas. Only this time I'm going to make them out of wood. Or I should say I'm going to make the pattern for them out of wood. And my husband is going to make them out of wood for me. Now, the reason why I want to replace these spatulas as well, they're getting kind of worn and the edges are all chewed up and the little red thing here on this one falls off all the time. And then this one you can see, well, it's all dirty and disgusting in there, and I don't know what's growing in there, probably something I don't even want to know about, probably some kind of mold. And the other thing is, well, they're plastic, and I'm trying to eliminate plastic from my life because I don't know how many things and molecules of plastic substances are getting in my food from this. And so it's time to think seriously about replacing these. So I'm simply going to trace these, and now I know from working with my husband, I can't exactly have the shape be how it is here because it's going to be, instead of two parts, it's going to be in one part. And I need to account for the strength of the wood right here at this junction. So I'm going to have to modify that, and I'll show you how I do that after I get the basic shape traced. So all I do, it's very simple. I trace it out. I think we all know how to trace. And I will darken this with a marker too when I'm all done. And then I'll do the other one. Now this little one, I want more of a point to get in those little, because I try to get stuff out of my canning jars and I try to get every molecule out or close to it. And I'm not too worried about the exact handle shape because that will be dependent on the wood. Oops, I moved that. So I'll just fix that. No, I'll let my husband sort of determine the handle shape and the handle length. Because that will be dependent on the pieces of wood. Now I can see that I've got a little thing there. Now, what I need to do is, because on this, especially on this larger one, I simply can't cut the wood into there because this is going to make a weak spot across there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to alter that to come in like this. So you can see on the overhead camera what I'm doing. It doesn't necessarily have to be symmetrical either. And then I might, on this one, sharpen this point up a little bit more. It will wear in the wood anyways. And then, to make my husband happy, I'll darken all of this. So this one I'm going to actually taper it from lower down because it is a smaller spatula and it's meant to get into smaller spots. So this gives me a little bit more leeway to get into tighter spots. But again, I don't want to make the neck along here too thin because of the wood. Now, typically he'll use birch to make our kitchen utensils because that seems to be the best wood for projects like this. It's a nice hardwood and it's very sturdy. It has enough elasticity to sustain slight flexing forces. There. Now, if he doesn't get the shape exactly like this, I'm not going to complain and worry about that. And then this one, I'm just going to get this part. Oops. And these I'll simply cut these out and he can use these as a pattern. And then we have this as a pattern. And then, if we like it, we'll maybe even make a wood pattern so that this cardstock pattern doesn't get worn out, because it will over time. And simply, I've just used an old file folder for cardstock. I have piles of these from a previous life, so. And I saved them because you never know when you can use something like that. There, and so that's my pattern. And it's not perfect, but then again, it doesn't need to be perfect. It's simply a guide. The pattern has been traced onto the wood, and the wood has been placed into the vise to hold it securely. You'll notice it still flexes a little bit because it is a rather narrow piece of wood. Tom is using his turning saw to saw this out. It's called a turning saw because the blade can be turned, and you'll see him, like right here, adjusting it so that the angle can better match the angle with which he needs to cut. He will also be turning the work into the vise, repositioning it, and that also assists in making sure that you can easily follow that angle. Here Tom has put the work into the vise at a slightly different angle, and he continues to use his turning saw to cut. I'd like to also add that this is a homemade saw, and it works really well. It works better than the coping saws I have used in my past. And notice here, he is going to cut straight across there, and that just helps get the angle a little easier to cut. Because when you're going around a sharp curve, you still need to just be aware that that blade isn't going to flex as much as you would like it to. This is a little bit more work. I shouldn't say a lot, than using a jigsaw, which you could also use, although you actually have more control with this homemade turning saw. And now he's going to cut a notch there, and that's just to have a little starting part to get the saw replaced back into the work. To make the final cuts, Tom has removed the spatula, or the work, from the vise, and he's using his sawhorse to complete the final sawing. Notice he needs to saw this a little more gently because it's flexing a little bit and it's hanging off that sawhorse quite a bit, and so you don't want to break it. So you just have to be a little slower and a little more careful. Tom is now making contour lines on the surface of the spatula, and this is really the back side, and this is to guide him in taking off the excess material to make a nice curved surface. Here Tom is making a depth line which serves to mark the beginning of the back side of the curved surface, which he will begin to cut in a moment. Now Tom is inserting a brace, which is simply just a piece of wood, to support the spatula while he begins to pare it down using a spoke shave. The curved backside is slowly forming by continuing to use his spoke shave, and he will also on occasion use the side edge of a chisel, and it's just a matter of doing this and taking off a little bit of material at a time until you get the desired curve that you would like. At some point, Tom is hoping to replace these spoke shaves because they're not the greatest spoke shaves. This one has a curved blade. He has another one that also has a flat blade. At this point, he's going against the grain, and you can see that's a little harder to do. Tom is torifying the wood with a propane torch. This seals the wood up and also helps it resist rot. This is an old technique that used to be used on siding too, so it's nothing new. This could also be done over an open flame, but we're just using the torch because it's easier for a small piece like this without having to build a large fire. Since we are using it for food, the sealing also is really good for the wood so that it doesn't absorb too much of where we're cooking. And not only that, it also makes it really, really smooth, and so it has a really nice feel to it. And we will take it inside when we're done and oil it with a couple of coats of our special triple mixture. Okay, it's time to oil, and we're using our 3-part mixture, which is 1/3 mineral spirits, 1/3 linseed oil, and 1/3 oil-based spar varnish. We just buy these ingredients separately and we mix them up in small jars for use for almost all of our wood products.